Good morning, good afternoon, LinkedIn friends, Value First Nation. Welcome to episode 4. I think we have now Value First Measurement with Danielle Urban, and she brought a special guest with her today. Nick, good to see you, man.
Hey, y'all. Thanks for having me on.
We couldn't have this conversation without him.
Let's just dive in right there, Danielle. Why could we not have this conversation without Nick today?
Well, we're talking about signals over measurements, signals over scores, I think was the alliteration that we put to this one. And clearly, Nick has started smoke signals recently. I could end there with no further explanation, but really, I know that Nick is big on understanding what the drivers are and how you meet someone where they're at, rather than trying to sort of aggregate or personalize on mass, personalize. And so, yeah, who better to bring in this week than the expert himself?
I love that. I love that. It's funny. Look, I mean, lead scoring has its values and account scoring, and we have our ICPs. But I think that there's so my last company, right, was air traffic control. And we did this thing where we said, okay, I know so much about Chris and about Danielle that I can like recommend the best of a company's content to those humans. And the way that we did it was interesting. And the further I got into it right before the business got acquired, the closer I got to believing it was wrong. And so, which good thing we got bought, and now I'm not doing that. So here's the thing that was really interesting. What it was doing, it was saying in aggregate of all the things that we know about Danielle or Chris, this is the content that we would recommend. Well, what if today something happened in your business or for you or in your market that suddenly changed the entire scenario? And when you started to think about like the difference between recommendations and relevance, like true relevance, dude, at this moment, something happened. Our company had an SEC filing, or there was news about us, or we had a fundraising event. That defines my entire context and like platform for relevance in that moment, right? And it's just so much easier to be relevant in response to signals that are super well tuned. And that's kind of the other part of the equation, is that it's also about not broadly what works in every single business, but like for this company, this signal means that there is a reason to have a conversation with this person, right? And I think that that's what's so interesting about how things are evolving. But it's also a bit of just kind of was starting to get to a place where I was seeing my own product was like maybe really not built the right way, right spirit, right idea. Glad that it has a new home, but really started to believe that there was a very, 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 very different approach that needed to be taken.
And yeah, we're here today to talk about that different approach. Not surprising how aligned what Nick just said is what I'm about to read. Something I've learned through doing these shows. It's like I want to get to this part, and I kind of stumble into it. But let's just get it out of the way so that we can kind of create some structure around what this looks like. So number 4 today, we will embrace signals over scores. We believe in freedom from artificial reduction of complex realities to simplistic numerical targets. We commit to using measurement to reveal patterns and insights rather than to judge or rank, focusing on what metrics tell us rather than whether we hit arbitrary targets. This means we will look for trends and patterns rather than focusing on specific numeric goals, use ranges and directions rather than precise targets when appropriate, emphasize what the data reveals over whether it meets expectations, treat unexpected results as learning opportunities rather than failures, and create psychological safety around measurement discussions. And the example I have that just was talking about this with Casey, she's the lead scoring person this year, and we've been working together on some stuff. Like when I met HubSpot in 2017, I was going through an unfortunate, let's say, onboarding with Marketo. I was a Salesforce user, director of marketing and sales, $2 million company, 10% shop, like ICP all day for HubSpot, I'm pretty sure. I didn't see HubSpot because I was in the Salesforce marketing net, right? And I was like, all right, I got approval to do marketing automation. Let's go buy some stuff. I went with Marketo. Terrible idea, by the way. Company. What am I thinking? But onboarding wasn't going great. Even so, I was wanting to learn how to do marketing automation, which brought me to HubSpot Academy. And I consumed a lot of courses, right? I maybe got some emails about like more resources related to the courses, but never asking for like a call or to buy anything. Day 27, Marketo hadn't figured it out. I'm now willing to do work to try and get out of my contract. So I make my way to the pricing page on HubSpot. And in 7 minutes, I get a call from a salesperson. And at that point, I am so thankful for that outreach. Because if I don't get it, I might not try to get out of the contract. I might not try to change. And now I'm a HubSpotter like for life, right?
I love that.
That was what I can only imagine is happening. And that's what me and Casey were talking about, is my score. Yeah. Something is telling them, man, this dude's taking a lot of courses. But the mindset, at least back then, was like, until he raises his hand, like we're not doing any outreach. Like the idea of Academy is to learn. And if we get in the way of that by pitching them, like then we're not on board.
Which I can appreciate.
Right. And it's not, so I say signals over scores. Scores can be signals, I think, but it's been tough. Like once you rely on the score exclusively, like Nick mentioned, and what we talked about last week on value first communication, that principle was respect timing and context at all costs. It's never been more important than it is right now. I'm seeing that in my behavior, like user behavior. Like you might have sent a great email yesterday, but if I wasn't in the mood and I was just out that day or whatever, doesn't matter how good the targeting was, doesn't matter what my engagement levels were, like you missed it. So can we move resources and effort towards hyper relevance and being there, like when we see the signal versus trying to figure out like what the signal needs to be, right? So I'll leave it there. I went on for a while. Thank you for that time. What comes to mind?
Cede my time to the chair. So there's a lot there that resonates. I think something that is happening for marketing and sales broadly is that with the advent of our ability to kind of understand and measure information that is unstructured and more unwieldy than ever before, we're starting to really pick apart our traditional modalities, right? Lead scoring was kind of as much as we could do back in the day. And if you were in a really awesome shop, you could get a little bit of time with a data scientist to maybe dump all your data out and start to figure out 9 courses and then a pricing page visit, which HubSpot could afford to do, actually meant something. The real travesty was that it was mostly marketing trying to defend and provide context to sales, right? And that wasn't ever really about the buyer journey or buyer value. It was about protecting my budget and making sure that sales was like, oh, that's really awesome, which not for nothing is exactly how the vast majority of the intent market ever came to be, right?
Mhm.
It's like, dude, what, like Bombora? Sorry, guys, I love you. You're all very smart, but what an insane idea that means anything at all, right? Like, I think the context of that space is just wild. But we live now in a time where between all these incredible APIs, scrapers, which legalities be damned, right? But like, there's unbelievable information that you can know now, and it can be an absolute kind of like mess. But I say mess, I mean unstructured. It can actually be a mess. As I talked to two true kind of CRM database experts, and Danielle and Chris, like, it can be unstructured and still mean something in a way that's repeatable, which is what enables maps and CRMs to actually be able to do something and add value with that kind of context. But your point about like identifying the right signal,
Mhm.
I mean, like, if you had told me 3 years ago that in real time you could be measuring SEC filings and using it for context and activating against that, I'd have been like, sweet idea.
Mm.
But like, no, you can't. No way. No way. Now, dude, that's how we go to market. We look for companies that have filed a private, funding moment, and we're like, wow, that's a pretty decent size, and it's early stage. They don't have a sales or marketing leader there. It's like a good time for us to reach out and be like, hey, let's build you some systems, right? And that's just our own use case, but there are tons of these. And traditionally what we'd have done is we'd have been on the internet on Sales Nav, and like, I'm looking for some CEOs, and I guess the company headcount can't be very big, and let's pray to God that the 1,000 emails I send this week, that one of them is going to respond back and turn into an op. And it's like, that kind of was as good as we could do. So I guess my overarching point is that I think that we're at this place that we can do it really well.
Mhm.
What I do think is happening in the market, though, is that it's been like just bastardized, right? We're ruining it, right? And like, I can send 10,000 quote unquote signal driven emails a week, and that also was the wrong answer. So your point about relevance, Chris, and like, it's not just one thing, it's several things, and it's knowing your several things. Oof. It takes a level of introspection by a revenue team to really first admit that they haven't known that, and to then start to grok how important it is that they need to.
Yeah. I feel like we're entering inbound version 2.0, because it started off as like, let's build blogs where we're creating the environment for someone to show us their intent. Let's get them on this page and call it an inbound lead when they decide to fill out a form because they think our blog is cool, which never happened, but we all thought it would. Maybe there's a white paper in the mix. And so then we went to like, oh, wait, that's saturated. It's too hard to be found. Now we're going to do this outbound thing that has more information than ever at our fingertips, but that like so fast just evolved into noise. I have to tell the story because I've been debating if I want to post it, but somebody reached out to me because I am the CEO of a small company on my LinkedIn profile now, and asked me if I wanted a free CRM audit. I was like, did you my profile or my website? Like, oh my God. But like, that's where we've ended up, is like somebody pulled these little random tidbits that they found on the internet and decided that I was their target market with absolutely no context whatsoever. And so now we're moving to that point where we have even more information, but we acknowledge that we need to use that information in a very different way, because we need to use it to understand what's happening in their situation. And everything always comes back to story brand for me, but being the sidekick to the hero to make them look like a hero is where you need to end up being. So if you see that there's an SEC filing, or you see that they're posting or somebody's talking about something, or there's a Slack message that asks a question, and you can be helpful and take it one step further to make them the hero, then somebody wants to pay you money eventually someday. Like, it all kind of shakes out where you actually position yourself to be helpful, and then they come back to you and do business with you. And maybe that sounds a little Pollyanna in long term, but personally, that's what I found to be the case, is like, I'm here to help you because I saw this, this, and this. I think this solution is right. And that's what we all wanted to do, but we just went too far into the volume play because we had too many tools that made it easy.
Hallelujah. Oh my God.
Just in case you still need that audit.
In case
That's so
I'll make
good.
sure I compare them all.
I got that covered for you. So
Yeah.
I love so much about that. And I think there's a few things there. One, the lazy initial layer of CEO without any evaluation of what the heck it is that you guys even do is true profound laziness, and it colors the vast majority of the market and the playbooks that are out there right now, because they're like, oh crap blast, right? The TAM is millions of units. What does it matter that we set 98% of it on fire? I'm still going to get to a place where I get some leads out of it, right? And so there's all these like quote unquote lead gen agencies that have their 90-day playbooks. In month one, you're like, whoa, we got 30 leads. And then month two, you're like 20, 25 leads. And then month three, you've got 10. And then month four, it's over. You fire them and then they move on to the next rube, right? And this is a lot of what I think is going wrong in the signal space. And there's a couple of things that I think really resonate for me. One, when signals are done really well, sales cycles get very short, right? But sales cycles are short because marketing activity is exceedingly well considered and done slowly with purpose and with value at the center of everything that it's doing. It is a month of Chris taking courses, right? It's maybe 6 months of engaging with your LinkedIn content or whatever it might be, but this stuff starts to build over time and sales benefits from it. But I think from an execution standpoint, when people think about this, it's like, okay, let's say your TAM, your unit TAM is millions of units. You should still not be sending, though, but maybe a few dozen outbound motions a week. But you should be dependent on those outbound motions having exceedingly high response rates and response to meeting rates and meeting to SQL and pipeline rates. Like all of those things are going to flow from looking at a comprehensive set of insights around somebody and being like, now's the time. They know us. They think we're smart. We've added value in their lives. But that also changes the purpose of content. This is one of my favorite things when we talk to customers. They're like, oh man, we're potentially looking at hiring an SEO agency. And like, I don't mean to crap on SEO, but it's like, dude, we don't have to wait anymore. Instead of writing for organic and producing organic as like a way that we build a business. And don't get me wrong, if you're programmatic, if I were Zapier, I would still be leaning into that all day long, but that's not content. That's want to connect X and Y. We do that, right? And it's like, there's a page dedicated to that. I find it and there's my solution. But, like the way that we think about content is we know who our ICPs are. We know what they care about. What if we like bring the mountain to Muhammad? You know what I mean? It's like, let's build the assets and let's just go put it in front of them when it makes sense to put it in front of them. It's like, hey, I saw that you were doing X. We have a resource called Y. I hope you find it useful, right? Again, that's the way that you take content. And so your point, Danielle, about like inbound 2.0, I'm all about it. Like, I think that's exactly what it is no more, pardon my language, bullshit content. Create insanely valuable assets, calculators, artifacts, programs, documents, notions, like make the things that people can copy and actually start doing their job better with some language to give them context, video for context. I love that stuff, but solve real problems. They will ask you for more at some point. Like that's a freaking fact. And the thing that's wild is if you ask any head of marketing or sales, like, who do you love? What have you bought for work? How did they treat you? Well, they all describe the same experience. So why are only 3, 4, 5% of them behaving that way? We actually know what it feels like to get good stuff.
Mhm.
right? And then we go out and we do bullshit anyway. And I think that we're at that point where everybody's trying to figure out what like signals and jobs to be done and value and all that really kind of looks like. And we're in a place where we can finally do it in a repeatable motion. And I just think we're kind of in the primordial ooze of that 2.0, Danielle, but like I think we're starting to kind of collectively go like, oh man, this is actually possible. We could be useful and valuable again and again and again and build durable pipeline that converts.
We just don't know how to break free, like, and dive in. Like this is what value first is all about. Like this whole structure that we built says you're not allowed to do that, right? Because it should be as easy. I'm so glad you brought it back to inbound 2.0, because the difference now is it's not inbound for conversion anymore, like ever. I think true organic in the way that we've always known it is dead. And if you do inbound to get the signal and then you nail it immediately, because everybody overthinks the content piece and what makes a piece of content valuable, right? I guarantee, like, as I was doing consulting as an agency, it became very clear that the HubSpot knowledge gap was significant. And it was always something that came up during any kind of conversation. I did so much like in Sprocketeer to try and learn like how to use HubSpot, how to use HubSpot. It doesn't matter your title, your industry, like everybody uses it differently. That's problem number one. Plus nobody knows about 4 out of the 6 hubs, like responsible for every other problem. Everybody's looking at it as a point solution. So now I have a library of content that I can offer up a video of me talking about HubSpot in hopefully a valuable way that like immediately solves any kind of credibility concern over whether or not I can help this person with HubSpot. And that came through consistency instead of this, let me figure out like all these ICPs and how they talk about it. And it's just like, no, there's a bunch of people with this problem. Like, first of all, we only solve it by actually talking about all the things that people don't know about. But that's where the relevance and the timing can be 100% of the value. Like it might be a super regular thing that's never going to show up. There's no way they're going to, because like HubSpot is what HubSpot does. Like people don't call it a deal. They call it an opportunity. Like they're never going to search deals, right? But this piece of deals content is going to answer their question guaranteed. And when you see them ask about it on LinkedIn and you're there in that moment, right? I think that's the part of control that we just have to give up. Like if we think we have to nail the when, because there's every variable is out of our control, right? Except for how we show up and where we choose to be present and how we choose to take action, right? Like, so control that. There's so much effort going into all these things. By the way, you figure out your messaging and what people like and don't like real quick when you're just showing up every day inside the community. But there's, and all those signals, very hard to be like truly measurable in the traditional way. But everybody loves that story where it's like sales or whoever. It's like, oh yeah, they said this thing. Like I had this great thing to share. We know it works every time. It worked this time too. And we closed them. Like it was so easy. Like, why can't we do more of this? Like, well, you probably could. You just got to get rid of a bunch of old stuff that you're doing.
Stop sending emails every day.
Exactly. Like this is like, and again, like I only bring up these other conversations because we're so aligned. This is what value first, like we all see this. We all feel it. It resonates with everybody, yet we can't make common sense decisions around this stuff. So like my pricing page moment and the way that people have been doing scoring, like imagine like if we agree on no amount of downloads will ever equal, a demo form fill, right? It's specific intentional hand raise. So can we, but there's other signals that we could create, like pricing page visits, right? Or specific videos watched all the way through after they've done these things. Instead of trying to build these into all these automatic scores and then just say, hey, salesperson, like go get them. Imagine like the score keeps going up. Let's say I take all the courses, I consume all the content. And then as soon as I hit the pricing page, a specific salesperson gets a notification that I'm on the pricing page, and they know to click this button, go look at this score. And if it's over a certain thing, like they're in, like go get them. Or oftentimes different people are taking different actions in the same company. And like that might be that person's first like visit to the website. So their score went from 0 to 5. Meanwhile, there's 5 people around them, all the scores of like 1,000. And if you're in charge of that account, you probably know that. So now you know to come and look at this context and still do the outreach instead of coming in and saying, oh, it's score 5, right? I'm not going to do that.
Yeah, I love that. I've done some live streams with Casey about scoring. And for one client, I've talked about this 100 times now, but I built them a scoring system for marketing attribution. And they were not at all they talked about maybe in the future using the scores for like an actual MQL type threshold. But that's not even on the roadmap because right now they're trying to understand what marketing channels resonate at various points of the buyer's journey. And so we're using scores to help educate them, like what kind of engagement did they have with events? Did they register and attend? How many? And when you see a high events score on a company record, now you know that company likes events. Cool, let's invite them to dinner. And then we have another company account that shows they have a really high like webinar score or a paid media score. You know how they're discovering you. Let's figure out how to retarget them with content that's going to resonate. Which landing pages did they end up on? And you can start to piece together that journey. It's still sort of a watered down version of a buyer's journey, but when you are trying to scale, you have to find the tools that will give you those indications because we're still somewhat limited to knowing what is the thing that matters. Like you have to build that notification. You have to know that you're looking for something. Maybe it's the pricing page, but it could be watching 10 lessons. Like we don't know what that is. We don't know that 10 lessons could be, the college senior trying to get context for a research project versus Chris who's ready to make a buying decision because he hates the buying cycle he's gone through for another platform. So like we're still limited by how much we can see in what we can track. But I still think that we're able to use those tools to help us piece together a better story so that we have context for the signals that we are able to track. And I think there are some tools out there that are sort of creating more of those opportunities, like Service Bell. I know Evan Dunn ended up working there for a bit, and it's like an on-call video chat on their website. Like when someone ends up on your website, it's like talk to somebody. Just open up that conversation so that you don't even have to navigate the website. You can just ask the question. You don't have to fill out a form. You don't have to worry about salespeople chasing you down because hopefully we're moving past that. But start that conversation to get your questions answered, to let someone be helpful in the context where you need it. And so I think we're moving towards a world where those opportunities will become more obvious and present themselves because we're creating the environment where that can be possible. And we're less limited by, set the scoring model to tell us when this happens or send an alert when someone visits the pricing page. We don't have to rely on marketing setting up that alert email or that Slack message to make that relevant and make that pop up in front of someone.
Yeah. And I think part of what you said there too is connected to something that Chris said, right? Which was we have to let go a little bit. And I think, we all kind of have eaten at Forrester's table about how many touch points there are before somebody turns into an MQL or an SQL or what, and you're like, dude, you don't know. You're like, cut it out. There's no way you actually know that number. And I used to eat that stuff up. I'm like, oh man, they're not, we haven't touched them 11 times, so it's not real. Dude, you have no idea. That person came by our booth at an event 4 times. Right. Likelihood that's in the CRM, about 0, right? And so it's like, but do those 4 count as 4 of the 11? Did it count in Forrester's original model? is it part of it? So I think your point, Danielle, like, we can know as much as we can know. And if we control the experiments, right, or control the breadth of what it is that we're trying to learn, it does actually provide really useful context. But if it's all about some aggregate level score that is just supposed to get beyond or below some threshold in order to indicate what might or might not come next, that's where it really all kind of goes to fall apart. And I think what's happening is that A, we're starting to measure more. B, ideally, we're starting to measure less about ourselves and more about our prospects, which is where I think some of the external signal-based stuff becomes really, really interesting. And it becomes more about that like moment of relevancy, and it turns the content game into how likely is my brand going to punch through in that moment of ultimate relevance, as opposed to hit a wall simply because we aren't known or aren't known in a positive way by this person who actually is at this moment in a position to need us, right? And I think that that's the thing where it's like, I don't know, quit measuring the freaking signal. I mean, I can't tell you how many people have shot me DMs on LinkedIn and been like, hey, really, the content's been great. I've never seen you like anything I've ever posted, and you were specifically mentioning posts.
Yeah.
It's like, should we measure what we are seeing? Yeah, for sure. There's cool tools like Trigify and all that, like let you really go grab it and like pull it in and do cool stuff. But it's like, there's more. There's more, and you just don't know what it is. And you just have to keep doing it and doing it with the right intention. Chris, to your point about like showing up and adding value. And then when those other signals that really kind of like put you in the relevance sphere crop up, hopefully you've earned the right to have that conversation right when the conversation needs to be had. You know, I think that's it's just, I don't know. We've been trying so hard for so long. And again, largely for the wrong reasons, right? To defend ourselves on budget, to defend ourselves in front of sales, right? As marketers. And it's like, that's all wrong. All of that is incorrect.
Chris and I have had a lot of conversations about how I just want to set attribution on fire. It's just not even worth it.
Indeed. We have time for one more question as we're going a little long here.
I'm good.
I can hang.
Nick, how do we help people transition and transform? Like I'm trying to get out of the habit of optimization. Like it's really transformation when everybody is graded on a specific set of KPIs that don't align, and sometimes are compensated on these KPIs. This approach came from like, I see everybody like understanding the problem. All these great frameworks are coming out, almost always focused on like tactical ways to tell the story differently or how to put your people in better positions. Yet I don't think leaders are in a position to stop like measuring these things when we know the top 3 reasons people have reached out to buy HubSpot is like lead scoring, lead generation, lead management. Like we're 20 years in, somehow those are still like the top 3 things I've heard. And they can't be, right? How do we help leaders like move past this? Are you seeing anything like work?
You know, so my wife does a really good job of this. She does AI consulting to like large enterprises, and where there's a ton of complexity and data problems and all this other kind of stuff going on. And what she does, which I think is the right thing to do always, is get down to as small of an acceptable initial effort or experiment as humanly possible, right? It's like, okay, you serve these 9 industries, but like, what if we just did something over here with this one industry for 90 days with these, and here are the canaries in the coal mine. Like, do you agree that if we saw this kind of signal come back from this small program, that would be indicative of pipeline impact, or actually deliver pipeline, depending upon ACV and, awareness in the market and those other types of things? I mean, you have to kind of be reasonable about what your expectations can be within 90 days. But I think that's it, right? It's like, okay, this experiment is not going to take this segment or this effort off the rails. And yeah, I qualitatively agree that if we got this signal back from this market or this experiment, that would be a positive indication. And it's like, okay, then we double down, right? And then we go after exploiting that signal and turning it into pipeline and turning it into happy customers and those types of things, right? But it's like, what can we do that is very small in 90 days? And then, ideally you infect the organization with this next, generation of thinking around how it is that you generate pipeline in a more sustainable, higher converting way. But I mean, the metrics should be clear, and it isn't impressions or, 9 touch points, or it's we're getting like positive repeat engagement from someone that before we were not, right? And we are finding moments in time to capitalize, right? Farm the engagement that we've been generating. And that farming starts in day 61, right? And the farming is happening very, very rarely because it's so specific. But if our average, sequence response rate is 1.5%, and we move a sequence response rate to 30%, well, can we decrease overall sequence volume by 15x and double our overall performance? Math says yes. And it's more durable, right? And I think that if we all agree on the scale and the scope of the math and know how measurable it is in the right places, then I think that we can get there. But it's like, I think you got to start so crisp and small and let it play out, because those are the numbers. That is what happens when you play this game this way.
Yeah.
Right. Like, and that's, I think on the agency side or the practitioner side, that's the conviction that we have to take into the office every day is, guys, I know this for a fact. I've been treated this way. I've treated others this way, and it works. Mm-hmm. Tell me qualitatively you disagree, and I'll call you an idiot. Right. Like, to your face in a board meeting, you're wrong. I know you're wrong. Right. And everybody else around the table knows that I'm right. So it's like, let's do the right thing the right way. But if you're scared, we just got to get it small enough that it isn't scary. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love that. We've talked a lot about pulling back the layers of culture, because if you're held to like a quarterly board report and you have to put the slide deck in the same format every time because they're looking for MQLs, or that's what you have to give to your investors, there are so many layers that you need to cut through to get that message heard and to tell that story. And so how do you shift from, the MQL count and the pipeline coverage and the, time to close and what percentage of the total addressable market? Like, let's throw total addressable market out the window. We want realistic addressable market, because that's what we can cover. And it echoes in ABM, but I feel like ABM was just marketers' latest version for getting a slightly smaller focus, or putting higher budgets in a smaller audience. But this is what it should have been the whole time. And I've always argued that good marketing is ABM. If you're trying to do all the things all the time, you're not going to be successful. That's just not how it works. Yep. And so if you can I love how you're saying, just take it down to that small experiment, and then you've got something to prove. Then you've got numbers that you can carry up the chain to say, we did this and it worked. And it's not a massive budget, and you can let it slowly, like you said, infect the rest of the company to sort of adopt that method. And then you've got, smaller organizations like you and I, Nick, and Chris, and Profoundly, where it just starts there, because we're coming into it in this day and age, and give it 5 years and we'll all be there.
Yeah, I think that's right. And I mean, and we are finding that in earlier stage companies, I think that there's culturally they're not so tied up with things.
Right.
But I do think but I do think on that cultural piece, when you look at like the agendas of all the conferences, right? Everybody's like, I'm convinced this should all be working.
Mm-hmm.
But like
It's not.
what? You know what I mean? And I think that that's, I don't think that there's even resistance in the larger, more complex, more kind of like, I don't know, culturally hindered organizations, but like they have the same desire. It's just that they have some more kind of like logistical crap to get around, I think, to kind of break through and start to play some of this stuff out.
Yeah. I think your point of having confidence, Nick, is so important, because it's hard. There's not a lot of stuff that you can point to say that this is the way, this is the new way. It's very hard to measure. If you don't have a big active group of people online that are ready to engage, like, it's not going to work as well. It doesn't mean there's not a group of people waiting to be permitted to go hang out on LinkedIn because they don't think they're supposed to. It's never been permitted as a part of their job. Like, so often, like, the people I meet in person at events that never engage with anything, yet they've seen all the content. And the more you dig, it's like, no, they're getting measured on calls and emails, right? Not LinkedIn activity. So they literally feel they're not supposed to be there, right? There's so many layers of this. And as consultants, coaches, the people helping leaders, like, I thought this was a manufacturing problem. Like, when I first got into consulting, and I was like, guys, we got to take the kid gloves off. Like, we can't just roll over and do Google ads every damn time just to get the quick wins, just to think that that's going to build trust and then let us do the real stuff, right? No, instead we become the quick wins department. HubSpot becomes the quick wins tool and never the business platform, right? So I love nothing more than when I get to be on calls and I can just be the backbone of the person who knows how HubSpot's supposed to work, how go-to-market's supposed to work. And I can just be like, yeah, no, that common sense thing you just said, yeah, it is common sense and it's the right way to do it, right? And that's hopefully this content, like, this is why I'm in love with the word value and value first. Like, why can't we just say, is this thing we're about to do going to create value?
Right on.
Like, is it going to build trust? And if the answer is no, don't do it. Like, why aren't we in that place? Right?
Cut it out.
You would think.
So thank you so much for joining us today, Nick. I think this was a great get, Danielle. Great job taking care of your value first pillar for sure. And we probably want to have you back sometime, man. It's been awesome.
Love it. I love y'all, and this is fun.
Awesome. Well, until next week, Danielle.
We'll see you next week.
Everybody have a great week.